Hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. You're watching Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. Don't turn it off.
Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review of the latest Terminator film, Terminator Dark Fate. This one brings Linda Hamilton back, Sarah Connor. Been a long time. It's got James Cameron back on producer duties. On paper, looking good. Is it? That's the question. The trailers never grabbed me for this, it's got to be said. I wanted them to. They all came out and successively made me feel less interested in the film. I've seen it. It's good. Yes, a good Terminator film. I'd say that, but in jest, I have stated I really like Terminator Salvation. The only one that's really dropped the ball for me is T3. But yes, we get a good film, a very good film. Possibly the best film since Terminator 2 in this franchise. I don't know. Like I say, I do have a soft spot for Salvation. I have to work that one out in my own head. But good stuff here, must be said. It does kind of recycle a lot of what came before. I've had this conversation with a few people on social media this morning, but it's a bit of if you take every Terminator film, to be honest, there's a bit of all of them in here. It's like they took all of them, put them in a mixing pot, and yet somehow came out with a good film. It does recycle more elements from 1 and 2, which obviously, if you're going to recycle one of the films in the franchise, one of those two would be a good idea. But my argument is simply that, look, any franchise pretty much does that. It's not the strongest argument to throw at a film if you're trying to diss it, if the film is still good. So yes, this does recycle a lot of stuff we've seen before, but it does it well. If you look at T3, that recycled 1 and 2, but it did it terribly, absolutely terribly. This doesn't. It takes the strengths of 1 and 2, kind of recycles them, but it does add new elements. It does throw new stuff in there. Primarily the character of Grace, which is this character played by Mackenzie Davis. Now, when a lot of the publicity for this came out, it did have that vibe about it. I'm sorry to use this term. I know a lot of people get offended by it these days. But the whole SJW thing, social justice, it had a very feminine bent. It looked like it was going to be one of those kind of movies that is really pushing the female empowerment agenda, which I've got nothing against showing female empowerment, but I like it to be a natural kind of process of the story. I like it to come out naturally. Like Cameron never made the original Terminator as a way of being a female empowerment movie. Ridley Scott never made Alien as a way of being a female empowerment movie. They just made good movies that happen to have female characters as their leads. So I think this film does err more on that side of things. Yes, it takes a more female dynamic from things, but it does it really well. It's got these really strong, three strong female characters. One of them not as strong as the other two, but her strength develops throughout the course of the film. Mackenzie Davis kicks ass. She's great. She's believable. She doesn't feel like like they've shoehorned this strong female character in to make a statement. She just owns it. She is that character. She's badass. She goes up against, is it Gabriel Luna? I can't remember the name of the guy, but he plays the villain in this, the Rev 9. She goes up against him. You totally buy her kicking his ass or giving as good as she gets, because he ain't no pushover, let's say that. That's another thing about this film, is that it brings back the threat. If you look at, again, T3 is the go-to example for me for everything that is wrong with this franchise. No guesses where that's going to come in my ranking video, but they took all the threat out of the Terminator. They made them laughable. The TX was just stupid. The thing is here, the Rev 9 is essentially another version of the TX, because it's the liquid metal over an endoskeleton, which to me always just seemed absolute nonsense. How is that the next development from the T1000? Because it can't. It's not more advanced than the T1000. That's stupid. Yet here, they make a good case for it, because actually this guy is now two Terminators. The liquid metal can come off him and be its own thing. So you've got like this double threat from the two of them. Good stuff on that front. But as I say, the three leads, particularly Mackenzie Davis, are really great. And they all have character arcs. In fact, all four of the main characters in this, the protagonists, we get a T800 back in the form of Arnold Schwarzenegger once more. All four of these characters, so Sarah Connor, the T800, a new character called Danny, and Mackenzie Davis's character, Grace, all four of them get really solid character arcs. Like if you ignore the other three and just focus in on one, you can see a very clear character arc for each of them. And all four of them are quite effective. All four of them, at some point in the film, have a moment that is quite moving or touching or has impact, has real impact. I've heard a bit of moaning out there already by people who haven't even seen the film about some of the quotes that Arnie has made about his character. He talks about how the place where we find him, he's the perfect husband, because he just gets things done. He does the ironing, this, that, and the other. I get that, with the climate we live in, you can jump on that and say, oh no, I know where this is going. It's this some feminist nonsense. They're putting the guy in the kitchen and all that crap, and it's just like, it's not like that. It's not within the context of the film. When you actually watch it, the context of Arnie's comments make much more sense. He doesn't lose any value as a character. He doesn't lose any strength as a male character in this. In fact, he gains strength, because it shows us what a perfect husband is, actually. What a perfect father is. Someone who is there for their wife, someone who is there for their child. That isn't weakness, that's actually strength, real strength. And I think the T800 is a perfect character to kind of explore that through, because he isn't human, because he is a machine, because he isn't guided by emotions, but more a sense of logic and stuff. We get this character where we find him. He's at a place where obviously Skynet no longer exists. Skynet was destroyed in T2. We have something different here, but something that he is no longer connected to. So where does that leave him? He's a T800 without a mission, without any mission parameters. He now has to function within the world. He has to find purpose. And he does so in looking after this family. And like I say, on paper, reading Arnie's comments outside of the context of the movie, I can understand why people might go, oh, really? I did the same thing before I saw it. But watching it, seeing it in context, it makes sense. I like the way it's handled. I like the character arc for this T800. And again, as I say, with the other three leads, they all get brilliant character arcs. You've got Sarah Connor, who is struggling with certain things, and then when these other characters come into her life, it kind of it affects her in multiple kinds of ways, but it chips away at her bitterness and starts to bring, because that's where we find her. She's a bitter woman, where we find her, and through the course of the movie, through working with these guys, that bitterness is slowly chipped away, and she starts to find her edge once more, starts to find her humanity once more. When we find her at the beginning of the film, she's become almost as machine-like as the T800 himself. It's a really good character arc for her. And again, Mackenzie Davis' character, Grace, she's this soldier come from the future who, is struggling with things of her own, and her mission, like I said, you can tell I'm trying not to spoil things here, so it's wording things in such a way. But regardless to say, she gets a good character arc. I think Danny, the character of Danny, for me, is probably the one I felt least towards. But that isn't to say that she isn't valuable, she isn't a vital part of the plot, and that she doesn't get her own really solid character arc. As I say, all four of them, it's not often you get that in a big Hollywood movie, you know, and that is one of the strengths of the original Terminator films, those first two Cameron films, was that when you looked at all the characters, they all got really solid arcs. And here, yeah, Miller, the director, Tim Miller, brings that back. And the writers. One of the writers on this, is three writers on this, and one of them is actually a favourite of mine, Billy Ray. If you look at a lot of the films he's made, he's written a lot of more kind of political style films that are lower budget than this, don't tend to be big Hollywood stuff. But I really like him as a writer. He's very good at doing character-driven pieces. So I can feel his influence here. I feel like, yeah, he's definitely injected a lot of character development into this film, and it really benefits from it. There was quite some excitement, I think, amongst fans when it was announced that Edward Furlong was back as John Connor. All I will say is temper your expectations with that. He's not in this long. It's mostly a flashback. I think some people may be a little bit upset with the way he's used, but for me, I feel like what they do with his character is a necessity, really, in order to move this franchise on, in order to take it into new places. And I know that would probably sound like a bit of a contradiction, given that I've said they've recycled a lot of the stuff here from 1 and 2. But I think you have to have this movie as a setup, as a grounding, in order to move on. That being said, this movie doesn't feel like a setup movie. We got Genesis, and it was kind of like that. They announced even before it was released that it was the start of a new trilogy. They've done the same with this one. They've announced that yes, this is kind of the first in a trilogy. However, they do it right here. This feels like a very self-contained movie. You come out of this one and you don't feel like you have to have another movie. The story that they tell here is a complete story. It's a rounded story. It caps off certain characters really well, really nicely. Like, we don't feel like we need to come back and see them again. So yeah, they've not pulled a Genesis here. That you're not going to come out of this movie with threads hanging, thinking, well, we still need that question answering, we still need that question answering, but it's okay, we know we're going to answer it in the sequels, but then it's not okay because the sequels actually aren't going to come because the movie hasn't made enough money. We're not in that same situation. If they don't make another one after this because this one doesn't make enough money, I'll be disappointed, because I'd actually like to see another one. But I won't be hurt by the fact that actually there's stuff left hanging. They tell a complete story. You come out of this, you can walk away from it and say, that's it, that's the end of the Terminator franchise, I'm happy with that, boom, we've got an official ending. So yeah, I like that they've done that, but I am intrigued, very intrigued to see where they'll go with, as I say, the much mooted further 2 films in what has promised to be a trilogy, providing this one is successful. There are some elements in this film within the story that, as I say, because it does recycle some elements, in many ways we find ourselves back to square one. Like, yes, we did away with Skynet, but we've now we've moved on to this because the timelines have all been changed as a result of that, and yet we still get into a very similar situation. I think it'll leave a lot of people thinking, well, okay, yeah, we're just back to square one, what's the point? But there is much point in that, and the film is all about that idea of fate. Fate is it's a theme that has been very recurrent throughout this entire franchise. And I think what this film in particular does is say that the ultimate battle we are fighting is against fate, is this idea that, if you stop things, if you challenge things, if you move things, they're still going to come back around. But what's important is, how do we deal with them when they do come back around? And that is our ultimate battle. And I think, I remember hearing a talk by someone once, or I think reading something they'd said, where he talks about life being this spiral. And it's like the same things happen and happen again and again and again, but they go up like a spiral. So as it comes around, you're dealing with the same thing, but you're on a higher level. And it comes around again, and you've learned from it, and you're on a higher level. And I feel like, in a way, that's what this film is about, is the fact that fate will alwaalways find a way to try and come back round. But we still have choice. We can still choose how we deal with that when it does. And I feel like that's ultimately what this film is about. Yeah. Again, like I say, it's a common theme throughout this series, and I think this film deals very well with it. Now, there are quite a lot of callbacks in this to the other films. However, I think, again, that this is like the antithesis to me to Terminator 3, because Terminator 3 was filled with callbacks, but they all felt shoehorned in. It's like, oh, that's a famous piece of dialogue, we've got to get it in there. Oh, that was something that, Arnie did in the others that is really famous, we've got to put it in there. So they just, it never felt organic. It never felt like a natural consequence of where the story was going. Whereas here, yes, there are a lot of callbacks, but they do feel naturally woven in to the story. Like there's, the things that happen as these characters move through the events of the story feel like, that's what would happen. And then, as a result, there is a logical place to put something, like a little nod to the sunglasses. There's a moment where it looks like the T-800 is going to gear up with the sunglasses. You could take it out. It didn't need to be there, but it didn't ruin the film. It didn't make me, it didn't get my back up against the wall in the way that Terminator 3 did, with its shoehorning of them in. Arnie himself gives a much more relaxed performance here than I'm used to seeing him give as well. I think like I say, we find a T-800 who is much older, has had chance to infiltrate, to learn, to become more human, and we find someone who's quite relaxed, quite comfortable in his own skin, so to speak. I like the performance by Arnie. Don't get me wrong, it's not something that's Oscar worthy, it's just he feels at peace with this role, and it does. Again, Terminator 3, he gave such a terrible performance. Here, Miller knows how to get the best out of him, that's all I can say. A primary negative with this film is that I do think some of the action sequences are too ambitious. And as a result of that, they have to fill a lot of the spaces within them with CGI. And some of that CGI feels a bit weightless. Particularly a sequence involving a plane crashing into another plane. It's like, if you've seen that in the trailer, to me, it's like, I watch that and I step outside the realm of possibility. When I think of a plane kind of sliding into another plane in the air, I think that's it, game over, everyone's dead, boom. It's not handled so terribly that I can't go along for the ride. But I just think, maybe tone down some of the action sequences so you don't have to go so full on with the CGI. But that's really my biggest criticism of the film, is a bit too much CG. I feel like if Cameron had directed this, he would definitely do a lot more practical work, and the CG would just be there to augment the practical work rather than take over it. There are times as well when we see the Rev 9 kind of jumping from things, and obviously they want to give him that superhuman quality, those abilities. We didn't need it. We didn't need to see a CGI version of him jumping from one wall to another, really. I'd prefer cables, quite frankly. Do some wire work, get rid of the wires in post. It would look a lot better. It would keep that physicality and believability. But the moment you step into some kind of weightless CGI, it takes me out. Like I say, it's not the entire movie. There's a lot of really good special effects work here, a lot. It's just that when it's not good, when the CGI is not good, you notice it and it does kind of bring you out of the action. The score for this film as well is done by Junkie XL. I love the guy. His scores for me are some of the best in recent years, particularly his Mad Max score and the work he did on BVS. He really does these kind of thumping, kind of pounding drum beat, call to war, so to speak, type of scores, and this is no different. He takes the familiar theme that we've come to know throughout these Terminator films, which I love. I love that they bring that back. I hate it when you have a really great popular theme tune that is part of a franchise and they get rid of it. No, they keep it here. We know we love it. He brings it back, but he reworks it in a way, he pumps it up in different aspects. My favourite is probably still from T2. I really love the score from T2. But again, I've not had a chance to listen to this one as much as I have the one from T2, so this may grow on me even more. But I do know I will be getting it. I will be, we'll be getting the score to this. I enjoyed it. Beyond that, not much more to say. It's a really good film. As a Terminator fan, as someone who's stuck with this franchise through thick and thin, I can honestly say it's back. Not to Cameron level. Don't mishear me here. I'm not hyping this film up to the degree. If you go into this based on what I've said, expecting T2 level, then you're fooling yourself. Don't expect that. That's silly. T2 is one of the best movies ever made, as is the first Terminator. To expect that again, you're just setting yourself up for a fall. But when looking at where they could have gone, what they could have done, what we've had, this is a really good Terminator film. I'm happy with it. I will gladly watch it again. I will definitely be buying it. And I genuinely want to see more, which is, a plus point. From T3 and Genesis, I definitely didn't want to see more of T3. I wasn't too fussed if we didn't see more from Genesis, although I have come round a bit more to that film recently. But I want to see more from this. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Very happy with it, as I say. But what about you? Have you seen this latest Terminator film? If so, what did you think about it? And where do you think it ranks amongst the franchise? Please leave your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.